Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Early Exchange, your daily tonic on business and happenings around. My name is John Rogers Chooks, and I'm standing in for Femi today. We are surely going to have an exciting time on the program today. Before we hit the train running, let's first hear the news from Blessing. Blessing, good morning. Okay, Blessing is right here, and she is about to give us the daily update and the news on Early Exchange. Thank you very much for always standing in. The regular face you always know, Femi, it's in this post right now. And after the break, the next face you will see is that of the beautiful Blessing.
for identity registration
What
and
time is Dele
harmonize
coming?
them through the National Identity Management Commission.
Have you called him this morning?
Yeah, we chatted already this morning.
Okay.
Security measures in the country. This was disclosed by Nigeria's Interior Minister, Honorable Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, at a meeting with the stakeholders in telecommunications industry, adding that the approach would not only save time and resources, but also optimize processes for accelerated national development. Furthermore, Tunji-Ojo highlighted the importance of a tech-driven data hub to document all identity information as a means of streamlining processes and reducing costs for the government and citizens to enhance government efficiency. According to him, by integrating information from various agencies such as passports, driver's licenses, BVN, NIN, and SIM cards into digital chips, government programs and initiatives can be effectively planned and executed. He called for the transformation of NIMC into a central point of data entry, enabling easy retrieval of information and eliminating the need for duplicate registrations. The Federal Operations Unit Zone C of the Nigeria Customs Service has intercepted raw materials used for making explosives from smugglers in Benin City, Edo State. This was revealed in a press statement hosted by the unit spokesperson, Jerry Atta, Deputy Controller Kayode Kolade, the Acting Customs Area Controller, addressed journalists at the unit's warehouse in Benin City. He issued a stern warning to smugglers, cautioning them against importing explosives and other contraband items that could jeopardize public safety. Still in Nigeria, the National Pension Commission (PENCOM) has introduced the framework for the establishment of additional benefit schemes (ABS) under the Contributory Pension Scheme (CPS) to enhance retirement benefits for workers. This aligns with the Pension Reform Act of 2014, which allows employers to offer extra benefits to retiring employees. To establish an additional benefit scheme, employers must comply with the PRA's requirement, including pension contributions and group life insurance coverage, as this initiative aims to provide stable and adequate source of retirement income for employees, particularly benefiting those in public sector with lower pay. In another development, Oyo State government says it is determined to attain a 100% literacy rate within the state in a bid to address the pressing need for improved education. According to the Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology, Professor Salihu Adilabu, the ministry is actively working on a framework that aligns with Sustainable Development Goals to ensure not only quality education, but also promote lifelong learning opportunities for all residents. The government is also engaged in a collaborative effort with the World Bank to tackle the issue of out-of-school children and enhance the learning environment in public schools. Now, meanwhile, former Super Eagles coach and NFF's technical director, Austin Iguavon, along with Portuguese coach Thiago Conde, are set to lead a 3-day pre-season seminar for coaches of Nigerian National League NNL clubs. The seminar, designed to enhance the skills and knowledge of all 40 NNL coaches, will be held at the Remo Stars Football Club Stadium in Ikenne, Ogun State from October 15th to 18th, 2023. The chairman of the Nigerian National League Board, George Alo, noted that the training aims to elevate the coaches' techniques and football knowledge to enhance the league standard. Away from Nigeria, but still in Africa, in a bid to facilitate the export of Uganda's crude oil to the Indian Ocean coast of Tanzania, Uganda is in advanced discussions with the Chinese export credit agency, Sinosure, to secure credit for its East African crude oil pipeline project. The project, which carries a $5 billion price tag, is a joint venture involving the Ugandan government, France's Total Energies, China's CNOOC, and Tanzania's Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation, TPDC. The permanent secretary for Uganda's Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, Irene Batabi, noted that Sinosure is set to be a major contributor to the debt component of the project. Environmental concerns and pressure from advocacy groups led some Western banks to withdraw from financing the EACOP projects. And then moving on to other stories now. Egypt's electoral body has announced presidential elections for December 10 to 12, with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi expected to seek re-election despite ongoing economic challenges, while constitutional amendment in 2019 allows him to run for a third term, potentially extending his rule until at least 2030. Election results will be announced by December 18, and a runoff round, if needed, will be finalized by January 16. While al-Sisi has not officially declared his candidacy, pro-government parties have initiated a campaign in support of his re-election. Still in Egypt, Egypt's Petroleum Ministry has launched an international bidding round on Monday for exploration in 23 open blocks, with the offer deadline set for February 25, 2024. The round includes 10 areas in Egypt's western desert, 2 in the eastern desert, 7 in the Gulf of Suez, and 4 in the Red Sea, the ministry said. Following this decision, Egypt has sought to position itself as a regional energy hub. Tanzania's Apex Bank has unveiled plans to launch a 10-year multi-currency medium-term bond worth 1 trillion Tanzanian shillings as part of its Green Bonds initiative. This initiative aligns with a green focus among African nations and businesses to secure climate finance for combating climate change and promoting sustainable development. The first tranche of NMB's sustainable note, named the Jami Bond, will raise 75 billion shillings, with the option to increase it by an additional 25 billion shillings if demand is high. The bond carries a 3-year term and offers an annual interest rate of 9.5%, payable quarterly, and investors have until October 27 to participate in the bond offering. Away from Africa, Brazil's Finance Minister Fernando Haddad says Brazil, Mexico, and India are attractive destinations for investment. He gave those remarks after a bilateral meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. He noted that the advantages these countries offer and Brazil's potential in becoming a prominent manufacturer of net zero products while maintaining resilience to external economic shocks are great. Additionally, Haddad encouraged the Mercosur bloc, consisting of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, to expedite its long-awaited trade deal with the European Union. He expressed concerns about potential political developments in Argentina, especially with upcoming elections, and urged the bloc to finalize the trade agreement to avoid risks associated with changes in the region's political landscape. We move now to the Middle East, where Saudi Arabia has announced its decision to transition from light touch oversight of its nuclear activities by the UN atomic watchdog to full-blown safeguards, a change that the agency has been advocating for. The country is in the early stages of developing a nuclear program with plans to expand, including uranium enrichment, raising concerns about potential nuclear weapons development, particularly in response to Iran's activities. Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman announced the kingdom's decision to rescind the SQP and implement a full-scope comprehensive safeguard agreement (CSA). The transition to a CSA would eliminate exemptions from regular safeguards if Saudi Arabia introduces nuclear material into its research reactor in Riyadh, which is nearing completion. Away from the Middle East, Air Canada has announced a new agreement with Boeing to acquire 18 wide-body 787 Dreamliner jets as part of its strategy to meet robust travel demand and enhance fuel efficiency. The deal encompasses Boeing's 787-10 aircraft with an option to purchase an additional 12 planes. Air Canada aims to leverage the Dreamliner's exceptional fuel efficiency to achieve operational cost savings while aligning with sustainability objectives to reduce emissions. This move by Air Canada reflects the airline industry's ongoing efforts to modernize its fleet with more fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly aircraft. The 787 Dreamliner series is known for its advanced technology and improved fuel performance, making it a preferred choice for carriers seeking both economic and eco-friendly benefits. The Financial Conduct Authority (FCA) and the Bank of England's Prudential Regulation Authority (PRA) have unveiled proposed measures aimed at addressing sexual harassment, bullying and promoting diversity and inclusion within the financial sector in the UK. The regulator's guidance includes a push for financial firms to develop strategies outlining how they intend to meet diversity and inclusion objectives and goals. While there will be no sector-wide diversity target, companies will be encouraged to set their own appropriate diversity targets, particularly in areas where there is underrepresentation. The Republican-controlled House of Representatives is set to push for significant spending cuts this week, a move that faces slim chances of becoming law and could potentially lead to a partial U.S. government shutdown by the following Sunday. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had previously reached a spending agreement with Democratic President Joe Biden to avert such a scenario earlier this year. However, some members within his own party are demanding more substantial cuts that are expected to be rejected by the Democratic-controlled Senate, placing McCarthy in a delicate position. The story from the U.S. ends a package today on the Morning News Update. I am Blessing AJ. Thank you for your time. Please stay tuned for the rest of Early Exchange. Good morning. Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange. I'm Blessing AJ. I guess when Chooks was introducing the show, you felt, what is going on here? Am I watching a different show? Well, just to allay your fears, you're watching the same thing. Chooks is part of the family. Good morning, Chooks.
Good morning. Thanks for having us on the show.
Okay.
Who is having who?
Oh, really? Really? It's a wonderful day. Things are changing. Good morning, Idausa Osamanze.
Morning, Blessing. Chooks, my pleasure to be sitting close to you.
Thanks for letting me sit close to you. I think that should be the line.
All right, you already know Idausa Osamanze. He's Director, Research and Policy, African Development Studies Center. So he's our INAS analyst, and this morning he'll be doing quite a lot for us as we begin looking at the news of the day. Several developments have emerged, like you listened while the news was ongoing. So we'll begin with the first story, which says that Nigeria's federal government is committed to eliminate multiple identity registration and harmonize them through the National Identity Management Commission, NIMC, to improve identity and security measures in the country. And it's really interesting to note that we talked about data yesterday, data management, as we looked at census, a tool for national development. By the way, you need to remember that this is the pre-independence series because we're having a countdown to Nigeria's 63rd independence anniversary. So now the federal government says that it is committed to eliminating multiple identity registration. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's one of those moves by the current administration to really make things work for us as a people. It's also very interesting to know that that particular agency, this regime, by executive order, has moved it to the Ministry of Interior because national identification is critical to national security.
Exactly.
So it's important that we are talking about harmonizing, synchronizing all the biodata of those who live in Nigeria. And that's we cannot overemphasize that because that's the starting point of security. Because if you don't know who your citizens are, especially when you hardly can differentiate a Ghanaian, for example, from a Nigerian, or differentiate somebody from Republic of Benin or Republic of Niger from Nigeria or Chad or the entire of African sub-region. So it is important for us to know those who are real Nigerians, and then we will be able to say, okay, account for them. We know where they live. The addresses will not be fake. You won't be having people with fake telephone numbers. Because all these are the breeding ground for crime and criminality in the environment. So what we need to really do is to see how can we synchronize this data so that it even makes life very easy for an average Nigerian. So if you want to renew a passport and you have your national ID card, you don't need to go through the whole hog of going for biometrics again. They just call it off from the central server and up you go. And then, of course, from time to time, you revalidate your data if your status change. Maybe you're single today and you're married tomorrow.
So just
go update and if you have changed address, you go update it. And all these things are important for national security. And I think it's the right move for the government to do to see how we can begin to track who are Nigerians. And when we see somebody on the street, we are not saying, where do you work? All we simply will ask is, give us your national ID card. I give you one simple story. I was walking in the street of Dubai once, and crossing the road, one plainclothes man just walked up to me and said, gentlemen, good morning. I said, good morning. What can I do for you? He said, can I see your passport? So I said, no, I am a resident. Where's your permit? I brought out my card. He took it into the car, scanned it, and gave it back to me and said, okay, you can go. See, this is how they enforce their security over there. that even the police are with devices that they see you and they can ask you, where's your card? And then you look at the card and you see what it is. Now, what this does for the people in the UAE is that if you have a police case, it is tied to your card. So
your criminal records.
Oh yes, it's tied to your card. Whatever thing you do, your transactions, your property, everything is tied to your card. A mere look at your card will show who you are. We have had Nigerians who had defaulted in the UAE before come into the UAE, and at the airport, immigration take your passport, they scan it, and they tell you, wait, you have a case with the police.
Okay.
So once we can do that and synchronize our data, we will be able to deal with these issues of people who are having multiple identification. Because as we are now, like I said yesterday, you have people who have changed names in the bank.
Some legally, some illegally.
No, even, yeah, illegally, some legally. Now, but of course, you give that room to criminals. You can imagine that somebody has a biometric in bank on BVN, he has one name, and then he has another name with name, with different biometrics. Now, if you harmonize this data, you will see it will be difficult for people to carry that kind of multiple identity.
Okay, leaving the area of security, let's also talk about national planning. How is this data going to affect national planning?
Of course. You see, we're looking at security in terms of even national planning and development. Because what you have here is that you have a database and you can know who your people are. Of course, you have detailed everything about you, your house address, where you work. If you're a tenant, it will show. If you're a landlord, you will show. And then government is able to know the number of deficit in terms of housing.
Okay.
If you are a student, the government should be able to know. And then we can say from one click on the dashboard, we can see the number out of our entire population that are students. So even in terms of resource allocation, this will help out. And of course, you know, this data is not just for adult alone. In short, as a matter of fact, NIMIC should have offices in all local government so that when births happen, the following day, the child gets its national identity.
Okay, can I also ask a question? We have a case where telecommunication companies all collected registrations from Nigerians and non-Nigerians. Are they meant to submit this to the Ministry of Interior?
Well, they don't need to submit it to the Ministry of Interior. They only will use it to validate what it is. And I think, of course, NCC has actually given this guideline. So what you do is that once the identification is synchronized at NIMIC, it becomes a prerequisite for any business you want to do in Nigeria. So what that means is that if you have a telephone that is not tied to your NIMIC number, that line is deactivated. So if you want it active, then you will go and supply your NIN details to the telephone operator before you can become active. And this is where, of course, NCC will need to weld a very strong hammer, because we are still seeing even people retailing already processed SIM, which is criminal.
That is not linked to their identity.
Yes, somebody have pre-registered the SIM. This is still happening, and this can only happen because we don't have data that are synchronized. If data is synchronized, you want to buy a SIM, you have to turn print. And if biometric does not allow you to buy a SIM, then you can't have it. Except that, like they do in other countries, where you have at the airport, they can give you a tourist SIM.
Okay.
And of course, that expires with the life of your permit to stay in that country.
More like a bona phone.
Yeah. So if you get into the UAE, for example, they can give you a SIM at the airport. The day you sign out of the UAE, that SIM is dead. You can't use the case. So these are some of the things that we can do really to aid planning and know who we are, look at our demographics, and then on the click of a button, a whole lot of things can happen from planning perspective.
I like the fact that the minister is wanting to transform NIMSI into a central data entry, which would make the process easy for both the government and for individuals.
You see, sorry, this is also very important. You see, because immigration is under the Ministry of Interior that is capturing passports. And NIMIC was outside. Now, bringing it in there
even makes the passport process, because the passport is even captured in it. Passport, driver's license, BVN,
all of this
into a digital chip.
So this is where we are. And I think that was a very smart move by the regime to move NIMIC into the Ministry of Interior, so that at least that cooperation and collaborations that we have spoken so much about here can begin to happen. Because the real issue has just been that every agency is acting in silos. And everybody wants to do something and say, oh, I am the one doing it. But this is not helping the nation in terms of planning, in terms of providing security, which is the primary responsibility of any responsible government.
And let's also see how this will facilitate the passports when people want to have passport, because you know before they give you a date and then you go to capture, it takes quite a while. So let's see how this reduces the time it takes to acquire a Nigerian passport by Nigerians. All right, let's move on to something else. The Federal Operations Unit Zone C of the Nigeria Customs Service (NCS) intercepted raw materials used for making explosives from smugglers in Benin City, Edo State. Now, they revealed that while they addressed journalists at the warehouse, and they've also issued that customs area controller have issued a stern warning to smugglers, cautioning them against jeopardizing the country by importing explosives and other contraband items. Importation of explosives. Now, before we used to think that things like this only happen in areas that have been known to really have a high level of insurgency, maybe in the northeast or in some very volatile areas in the country. But this is Benin City. Smugglers of explosives were caught in Benin City. What does that say about security? What does that say about activities going on in the country, Delsa?
Well, I think it's a very sad story that we are living in an environment where those who have the primary responsibility to actually ensure that our borders are safe sometimes pay blind eye to some of this happening. Now, you can be rest assured, if it's not coming from Apapa, it can be coming from the border at Benin. And I can tell you...
There are also some other borders in the north.
Yes, okay. No, I'm even talking about the southwest here, where things come into Nigeria.
Okay.
And you see, for me, really, it's sad. All those leg routes, there are customs there. All across. They know where everything comes in. And this is where we speak to the issue of patriotism. And that's why one of the biggest challenge that is facing us, because we're almost getting to the status of America in terms of small and light arms, which is the biggest challenge that the American side is facing. And they'll be saying, no, we don't. But even then, they have rights to own gun. And we don't have such rights here, except you have to apply to the police to give you a gun, and then you are able to demonstrate your responsibility in using such ammunition. Then, of course, government can actually monitor who buy gun and who has a gun. But here, you smuggle this thing into the society, explosive. We are preparing for war. Are we not even sure that this is for Edo 2024?
I was going to ask that because elections are around the corner in Edo State, and now you have smugglers of explosives. For what purpose?
Oh, yes. I was listening to the aspirant of ADC in Kogi election and was saying that, of course, he was raising some alert yesterday that, of course, there are massive plans to cause mayhem in the Kogi elections. And I think elections are not war. Because if it's not getting into Benin, maybe it's going to Kogi. We don't know where that thing is going because same route. So all these issues are our security men. They must prioritize Nigeria over and above their personal interests.
Okay. But don't you think we should first comment the customs on this?
Yeah, but my real worry is that why do we have to catch them in the town and not at the border? If it were done at the border, it would have been a commendation.
Because they could have got.
You see, because some of the things that we have started to see and we have been seeing over time is the fact that some of all these things comes out when eventually some people did not do what is right, okay, and it becomes news.
Also, I think it's right we get to see who brought these things.
Those things we never know.
We don't want to see the items. We want to see who.
Yes, so important. Yes, because this is important.
Who paid? Follow the money.
Yeah.
Then also, some of these explosives are not used for violence. They are used for illegal fishing. In our waters, they are also used for illegal mining. And these are all illegal activities.
Yes, illegal activities with dire consequences. And so, except we approach it that way, because it may make it look like, oh, it's not intended to harm anybody, but they have great consequences. You use it for fishing, you're endangering the aquatic life. You use it for mining,
you see, but this is one area too. And I think we really need to improve in this. And I think this affects almost every government officials. Why should we be telling people that we have caught people with explosive when the details have not been found? For me, that's cheap popularity.
But we get to see that happen every time.
Because
we don't
we have
get
seen
to be
a
updated
lot of
on the
all
full
these
investigation.
arrests, explosive, gun, and you don't know what become of it. Nobody is ever named as the importer. We have seen container. We have never seen anybody who had gone to jail for bringing illegal arms or explosive into the country.
No, show us the face.
Okay, yes, not Nigeria, no. Because it serves as a deterrent. You see, if people know that there are consequences for their behavior, a lot of people will run away from it. But over time, you hear that at the point of arrest, the media know. What happened eventually,
at the conclusion of the investigation, nobody knows.
But I think it is even better for us to know at the end of the day that the case has been concluded and we know the faces of those who have done these things, then you can come to brief the press. Now, these things that they are calling explosive, how are we even going to be sure that they are real explosive?
Okay, so it is a call to the authorities, whether it be security authorities, whether it be the police, it be customs, at whatever level. Conclusion of investigations. We don't get to see that happen in this country, and that's why a lot of times people assume that such cases are swept under the carpet, whether they actually swept under the carpet or not. But because there is no update to Nigerians, it is assumed that way. So I think we should begin to do things thoroughly and follow every case to its logical conclusion. And where penalties need to be awarded to erring parties, it should be to serve as a deterrent. We need a sane and secure society. And that's all we can take on the news analysis. We're going to quick break and begin to look at the issue for today. Our focus will be on Nigeria's public service. Stay tuned. Many thanks for being there. Yes, we're looking at public service in Nigeria because it is very key to the country's administration. When you talk about the administrative machinery of any government, whether it be the federal, the state, or the local government, it has to be their public service or civil service as popularly called. So we will begin looking at the ethical standards and code of conduct for Nigeria's public service. Idausa Osamanze, Director, Policy and Research, Africa Development Studies Center, is still very much here. I told you he was going to do a lot for us this morning, so we have no intention of letting him go soon. Looking at Nigeria's public service, let's even get to understand the role the civil service or public service plays in any government and in the country.
There's no country on the planet Earth that can be greater than the quality of its public workers. No country. And I think this is where we have failed over time. The public service, they're actually the people who set the template for national development. And if things are not tidied up in their end, you have a whole lot of gaps, which of course people exploit to the detriment of the nation. Every agreement, for example, that is signed is done by the public service. Your budget is prepared by the public service. The execution of your budget is done by the public service. So if you have an incompetent public service, chances are that you are going to have an incompetent nation. And so when you see what we are as a nation, it also speaks to the quality, not on the individual mind of public officers, but the quality of delivery of the entire public service. And you see, when Max Weber talked about bureaucracy, it was to help Europe account for the indiscipline and the incompetence within the system. And that's why you see the contemplation at that time was to say that if you have people who are indisciplined to work, of course they become corrupt. Those are forms of indiscipline and its manifestation. Then it is just easy for one public officer to sign off the entire nation. So bureaucracy put some checks and balances. So you have one accounting officer up, and then you have a chain of people from the bottom who report to one, report to one, report to one. And the whole idea is to see that if there's some indiscipline or corruption at one level, it will be discovered at the other level. If there's a competence happening at the lower rung of a ladder, then of course the person who is a little higher will be able to see what is happening. Now this is the real essence of bureaucracy. But you see, the tragedy is that most of the rot that we see really, they are issue of collusion. That the entire chain is colluding and really get the nation into big mess. And we have seen a lot of examples in this regard.
You've talked about discipline and you've talked about examples, so let's bring them together. As we look at the ethical standards for public servants, what are some of the things that a public servant is not expected to do? And what are the ethical standards generally for public servants in Nigeria?
You see, I've always argued that there's one ethic for everywhere, whether you are in medicine, whether you are in a law, whether you are in business, whether you are in public service, there's one ethic. It's the principle of morality, that you do what is right. And these are the issues which, of course, the public servants need to do. The key question is, why are you a public officer? Why is the government spending its resource to take care of you in the form of your salary, allowances? Is that government is expecting you to deliver a level of service on its behalf. And this is important. And now, in delivering this kind of service, transparency, openness, accountability, responsibility is required of such public officer. And this is why people are saying, if you're a public officer, for example, look at the code of non-compete, as it's called in business, that you are working for government and you are not supposed to be doing any other work, and the least you can do is to be a farmer. And of course, this code are guaranteed in the 5th schedule of the 1999 Constitution. Of course, it was introduced in 1979 first into the Constitution, that there are some basic code that I am working for public service. I am not supposed to do anything that will jeopardize the interest of the nation. So I can't own a company and be working for government.
Okay.
I can't use government money in business where I have interest. I can't give government contracts to companies where I have interest. And that is called, conflict of interest. Because you can't be serving a government and then, of course, you are using that opportunity to further your own nest. Now, government also expects some level of trust from you. So that's why you are giving public money. So it's not supposed to be used for private purposes. This money is meant for public good. The last time you were having conversation with Pastor Sunday Adelaja, and one of the things he said was that, look, the real reason why we have not been able to calculate money is in terms of how much of time. Because the service rule says you must resume work at a certain time. 8 o'clock offices are open, 8 to 5, or 8 to 4, depending
the public service
on where you're working. Now, you're supposed to log in at 8. So, as a civil servant, you should be punctual. But what do you see? Punctuality is not there. You get to some public office at 8 o'clock, it's not open. On Friday, by 2 o'clock, everybody had gone home. All these are contrary to the code that they subscribe to. Because it's a position of trust. And because you are trusted with that position, you are supposed to use it for the good of all.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question. While you were talking, you mentioned different things that civil servants are not supposed to do. Now, you also mentioned that a civil servant is not supposed to be working for the government and own a business. But we see that as the practice. Sometimes the business is even located within the premises of the government where they work. Maybe there are shops within that premises. Somebody who's working there also have a shop there where they do their business. So what is the role of salary structure in ensuring that civil servants or public servants adhere to the ethical standards in this regard?
You see, Blessing, ethics demand that the work that you cannot do, you don't accept it.
That's ethics.
Yes.
Okay.
It demands that the work that you cannot do, if the pay is not good enough for you, don't accept it. Once you accept the job, you are duty bound to execute the role and the function of that office. It's unethical for somebody to take a job and then come around to say, this money is too small. Because the money is too small, I think I need to go and do something else. It's unethical. And this is the issue that we must continue to speak to. If the job is not good for you, I've argued with somebody before and I said, oh, the politicians are taking so much money. You need so much money. Then go and become a politician.
Okay.
Try in your word. If you win councillorship or become a senator, you can go to the Senate and enjoy what they are enjoying. But the fact that you are employed to do a job, whether as a lecturer or as a clerk, let your salary that is attached to that office be enough for you.
Okay. Public servants, civil servants, I hope you're listening and hearing every single word from our own doctor. Sir, I want to ask some straight questions, and I will be very happy if you give me some very short answers. You're educating us this morning. Is the size of the public service bloated?
In Nigeria, it's over bloated. There are a whole lot of things that we can use technology to do that we are still doing manually. And this is even becoming a burden on public service.
Okay, the second one. Do we have duplicity of ministries in our public service?
Well, I won't call it duplicity, but I think that there are too many in my own estimation and ranking. Like people argue, take for example, United States of America, over 330 million people. How many secretaries do you have? That speaks to the number of ministry. If they can govern that space, why do we need, for example, over 40 ministers?
45.
48 currently, because we are still waiting for 3. So this is the real issue. The size is too much, because what this means is that for every minister you appoint, they have their own aides. And these are paid for. And this is why people are talking about the cost of governance. Every single minister has aid that the Constitution says they should have. And therefore, these people are serving in that capacity. The president has SSAs. The ministers have SSAs. The National Assembly have aides. Now, when you put all these things together and add it to the core civil servants, you see that the size is overbloated. And this is what is taking the chunk of our money. I did an analysis some years ago, I think about 2 years ago. And I just took one agency, NDDC. NDDC. When NDDC was established, the first 2 years of NDDC, you can confirm this, the overhead to capital expenditure was 80-20. 4 years after, it reversed. So what does that mean? You are paying more salary than you are developing the area where you are supposed to be putting money. And if that was not enough, we created a Ministry of Niger Delta to add to the bureaucracy. Now, what do you see? You cannot really see these things working on ground. And this is the problem that faces us. Now, I ask myself, what is the real usefulness of NDDC?
So,
when we have a Ministry of Works, for example, we have a Ministry of Works, for example, who is supposed to be providing work services across the 36 states of the Federation. What is difficult in us prioritizing certain area and prioritize it in the budget and ensure that the Ministry of Works get that work done rather than duplicate people? This is the issue.
Okay. So, but you also agree with me that some people will argue with you that this is also part of job creation.
No. You see, government are not the one to create jobs. You see, what it means is that, take for example, if the Ministry of Works, for example, are doing great works, what happens? A lot of people will be employed. There will be a lot of activity going on. The multiplier effect will be more than the peanut and the salaries you are paying to people. I've argued somewhere before, and I told them, you see, the argument that the Nigerian public service is not paid, well paid, is born out of the fact that we have not faced reality. And what is this reality? Is that you need few people to do this work. and they will be paid well. Otherwise, you are paying peanuts, you have so many monkeys as workers. So you can't get value for your service. So, but they are afraid that, look, if I leave public service, there's nothing I can do. Government must begin and deliberately to create exit plan for a lot of people. And I think this has happened somewhere. When, of course, the humanoid industry started to boom in China, what did the Chinese do? They shift their curriculum to ensure that many people who were going to lose jobs at factory were given new skills to adapt. About 2 years ago in the UAE, they have made a policy in the HR for every public officer to go and try their hand on sabbatical on trade.
Okay.
And they say, if you succeed in trade, don't come back here.
Okay.
If you can't succeed, you may come back. Now, all these are incentive to see how we can offload a lot of hand that the burden, the overhead burden, paying salaries that are pinned on to so many people who are actually contributing almost zero to the national commonwealth had to be addressed. And this is the only way to go. So put e-governance in place, let a whole lot of technology take care of so many things, and then you will have money to invest. You see, a lot of people talk about building big infrastructure as the gateway to employment creation. That's why when you go to advanced world, they are building and they are never tired. As we speak in the UAE now, they have started to build another tallest tower. You know what that means? Thousands of jobs.
Okay, I want to ask this question. We have Code of Conduct Bureau.
Yes.
We have Savicom.
Yes. Act 2. I can count them for you. ICPC.
Are this not clash of interest? Is it not this? Are they not doing the same thing?
Well, you see, they are not same thing. Code of Conduct Bureau is really to see that every public officer comply with some certain code of behavior.
Okay.
Take, for example, you want to start a job, you know, they need to know what's your worth when you are entering. And at your exit, they also need to know your worth. And by that, we can calculate whether there was some strange money coming into your hands.
What about Savicom?
Now, Savicom is actually to ensure high level of service delivery.
They have that same office in Code of Conduct Bureau?
No. You see, Code of Conduct Bureau is a small office, and they don't have staffs that can oversee all service delivery in all government agencies and parastatals. So what the Savicom rule did was to ensure that in every government agency and department, there are offices which the staff of those ministries actually will be there to supervise. And then, of course, you also have an anti-corruption unit in those parastatals and agencies, so that if there are infractions or somebody is asking bribe and things like that, you will have somebody to report to. But some of the things we've seen over the years, why these bodies really are not so effective, is number one, even the chief executive that is sending people to Act 2 and Savicom, sometimes is like punishment for them.
Why would it be like punishments?
You give somebody an office to go and do something and you don't give him power to execute.
So he's there to take notes.
So this is the issue. Because they don't see it, that if you really want to empower somebody to do his work, you can imagine now you are sitting down here and they say you are Savicom. How do you combine that role? And something is happening downstairs. The thing has to wait till you finish here before you can go downstairs. Now, this is the situation that we have found. Now, but all these agencies are good intentioned to really clean up the system, that we are having the best of service. But to what extent that is happening, and sometimes you go into some agencies, you don't even know where their addresses are.
Okay.
All right, let's look at accountability and also ensuring that people do not help themselves with government funds. Civil servants expecting to declare assets. Do we find that happen in all cadres, or it's only for those at the top echelon?
It's mandatory for public service. asset declaration. So it's mandatory.
Okay, in cases where people have run foul of the rules or the ethical standards, we just mentioned the different arms that are supposed to ensure that there is compliance with ethical standards. You have Servicom, you have Code of Conduct Tribunal, you have ICPC and others. Penalties. Are we really seeing that people are paying penalties for wrongs in the public civil service?
You see, this is it. Few people have, but I think greater majority run away with it. And this is because of the connect, the contact, the who you know syndrome within our system. That no matter how much people compromise system, I keep saying this, there's only one man that you can call. And this is one of the real issues that we have to deal with as a people. Because if we don't start to enforce righteousness, that people do offense and they don't have somebody to call, and they have to pay for their sin, of course, you find that sinfulness will continue. But when people start to pay, and they know that if I commit a traffic offense, and there's nobody to call. I remember there was one video I saw sometimes, one person commit a traffic offense, and then he was calling the governor and reporting the last man to the governor because he felt that he was so big. And even have effrontery to say it. And this is somebody that is supposed to be a man that has the consciousness of the nation. And he said he saw people violating, so himself followed.
It's called the do you know me factor.
So you see, this is the real issues that we have to deal with. That when people are committing infractions, they know that because I am some reputable person in society, there is somebody I can always call in society, and therefore they feel that they are above the law. Now, until the law catches up with everybody at equal level, a whole lot of things cannot go right. This is why accountability is difficult. This is why corruption is still festering. This is why there's so much irresponsibility in service delivery, that you go to public offices, you will be begging for service. I remember about 10 years ago when the UAE government were asking their public service. We have gotten to a point that we don't want our people to be coming to us. We want to be taking service to our people. How can we serve them 24/7? Here we call it public service. The real truth of the matter is that we are the one serving them.
Okay, talking about us and the public service, how is the society encouraging things like this to happen? How is the society making it difficult for public servants to adhere to the ethical standard? We talked about bureaucracy, but when you get to maybe an office and there are bureaucratic procedures for you to get a particular document or whatever it is you want, and people want to skip processes. Speak to that.
Well, it's because they know that you can skip process. Because the Nigerian factor is well known to everybody. And that's why people are offering. This is happening in other climes. In the UAE where I lived, if you commit a traffic offense, for example, and you say to the traffic officer, please, I'm sorry, your fine is doubled immediately.
For please, I'm sorry.
For please, I'm sorry. Which means it was deliberate. So if you are going to pay 100 dirham for that fine, it's automatically 200 dirham for pleading.
Okay.
So this is what you see. But here you see people, and they tell you, oh, they are not happy with the work they are doing. If you're not happy, leave it. You know, growing up as a child, I actually had thought that, you know, the level of service people render was having direct relationship with the quality of their pay. Until I saw in a climb where people were offering service, hoping that the high level of service they deliver will actually make people to appreciate them. And that's what you see in most climes. People are giving the best of service, not because they are well paid, but they are giving the best of service, hoping that man and God will favor them. I give you one very small example. I was in a hotel in the UAE, and this young girl was serving us every morning breakfast. And one of the morning was looking so tired, and I said, "Oh, you look tired." He said, "Yes, I'm tired." And I asked, "Yeah, why not ask for rest?" And she said something to me that made me feel sick. He said, "If I don't do my work, God will not bless me." And I was saying to my friend who was sitting by my side, "Did you hear her?" He wasn't saying, "If I don't do my work, I will not be paid or I will be sacked." So the motivation for doing that work was not what he was going to offer. So after some weeks, he came one morning and said to me, "In 15 days you won't be seeing me here." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I got a new job, better offer in Oman." And I said to my friend, "You remember, if I don't do my work, God will not bless me." Now, I think for me, this is a mindset. And this is why I speak to general ethics and morality. That people are doing work as a part of service to God first, and then to nation, and then to themselves.
Okay, so the part we should focus on is service.
Yes. And that's why they are called civil servants, because they are supposed to be servants, but they have become civil lords.
So where is the place of training in this? How can reform happen? What kind of training would be needed to make that happen?
I don't know. Maybe if
because
it's
civil
possible,
servants are sent on training,
you see,
but
I really wish, and I think I have to check, budget it last report, to see the volume and quantum of money that is spent annually
on training,
on public service training. We are not lacking them.
So how come,
both home and abroad.
So how come after the training nothing changes?
Now this is the issue. Why do people go for training? Do they go with the intention to learn, or they go with the intention to get extra code?
Okay, talking about extra code, that is another side of this particular discourse. Let's look at government contracts. We have seen several cases where a lot of government contracts don't go in for bidding, or some small government contracts are done by those within the ministry. Is this right?
I'm not sure that happens.
Or they are done. They are done by
cohorts of the ministry.
Yes, with different names.
Yes. So these are some of the issues, because if you check the book, you will find those infractions there.
Yes.
So this is where, for me, that we keep to speak to the matter of ethics. It's important. The whole mess that the world entered into in 2008 was a result of the unethical practices of few, quote and unquote, very influential CEOs, the errors of this world, led the world to sink. We can't forget in a hurry the Cadbury case of doctoring books, unethical practices. No society can grow when its people are not ethical. To understand that, look, this service is to the nation. There used to be one minister that eventually died in an accident, and they were thinking of moving him somewhere to India. And somebody did an analysis some years ago in Nigeria here, that what he required to go to India was about $45,000, and the cost of putting that machine in Abuja was less than $45,000. You see, this is what we all must speak to. And that's why you see, sometimes I feel real hot when people who had opportunity to prove themselves, after they leave office, they will become the moral bastion of society. The thing that they failed to do when they were there. I see some people today now, when you check the road from Okene to Benin City, and I saw, and we even have people who became Minister of Works, who had the responsibility to fix Federal Road, and the one that passed their father's compound, they couldn't fix it.
Okay, let's look at inadequate funding. How does this challenge adherence to ethical standards? You go to some government offices and you need a service. You're told there is no power, so you need to provide money. You, who is the person that needs the service, you need to provide money to buy fuel. And nobody has the interest of calculating how much you collect from every other person. Okay, let's use the case of capturing data for national identity card. At the time, there was a deadline. You had influx of people. You had so many persons going to NIMSI office wanting to do that. And you get there, you're told there is no power. We need money for fuel. So everybody contributes maybe 200 naira for fuel. Calculate that. Nobody's interested because you just want the service to be done. And you need to print out something. You're told, oh, you need to pay for lamination. These things, inadequate funding, how does it challenge adherence to ethical standards, and what can be done to check that?
I don't think our problem is inadequate funding. We just need
but
to
if the funds were provided for a fuel,
blessing, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this thing for free. For free.
Okay.
This confusion are created by the same people so that they can seek rent. That's the truth.
Meaning the funds were provided.
The funds are there. They are there. You see, when it is the simple law of demand and supply, which is the elementary economics all of us have read. Now, when there is high demand and there is low supply, what do you have? People can high price. And so even in business, you can create artificial scarcity so that you can maximize your price. The marketing is done. You create your own scarcity so that you can create a demand for that service. What many public offices are doing is creating the opportunity for rent seeking. QED. So when you set confusion in an environment, why must we, for example, talk about capturing? Why can't we decentralize it? There are anemic offices in all the council.
All the local government.
All the local government council. Take, for example, you have 20 centers in Lagos. Will everybody go and queue in Ikeja, Alausa?
Whether
you see, the real issue is that you make those systems not to work deliberately so that people can come and create that crowd. Now, that crowd, you know what it means? This is why a lot of people have been saying, even in terms of our security challenge, that the people who have decided to create what they call security votes decided to do so that, you know, you don't need budget for security vote. Once the governor can know how to apply it. Now, if there is no security threat in your environment, now so people will be asking, what did you do with security vote? So you have to necessarily create a trouble so that the expending of the security vote can be justified. These are the issues. And this is where we need to speak to ourselves and speak to our conscience. And we must not be tired saying these things. Because there are certain things that are not normal. How much is a printer? How much? How much is a laminating machine? What is the cost of buying fuel for a generator? You see, this is the issue. You see, you have envelope. And then you prioritize what you are going to use the money for. So rather than use the money for the one that will serve the purpose of the job, you use the money for the one that benefits you most. And that's why you see nothing gets happen in our budget here from January to October.
Then from October we'll just see.
Then from October to December you will see mad rush.
Okay.
All right, we wish we had more time to look at the ethical standards and code of conduct for Nigeria's public service, but we're out of time here, and we also need to let Idausa Osamaze, who has been really giving it today, steamingly hot, and we thank you very much for your contributions.
Nigeria must work for all of us.
It has to work.
And all of us must become ethical. Okay. We must do things morally right. We must follow moral principle to see this, not just work for us, work for our children and our children's children. We have that responsibility, and we must not go back on it.
Thank you very much. We're going to quick break, and when we return, we're looking at another aspect of the public service. Stay tuned.
You have this in your ear, isn't it?
Many thanks for staying with us. Yes, we're still looking at public service as it is critical for national development. We're looking at digital transformation as well as service delivery. Now, to join us talk about that, we have Aliyu Isakano, who is the CEO, Metrogate Incorporated Research Scholar at Digital Forensic Research Lab, Atlantic Council. We're joining us, Baz. But before we bring him in, let's watch this report on Nigeria's public service. Stay tuned.
According to data reviewed by the Bureau of Public Service Reform on 23 June 2022, there are 72,000 public servants working at the federal level. Similarly, data also shows that about 3/4 of working-age Nigerians were employed at 73.6% in the fourth quarter of 2022 and 76.7% in the first quarter of 2023, signifying that most people were engaged in some type of jobs. The public service, which is instrumental to the implementation of government policies, programs, and projects, has always been in the eyes of the public for its role in maintaining the country's infrastructure, protecting the environment, and strengthening the economy. But whether the public service through the public servants has been able to perform all these duties beyond reasonable doubt is left for anyone to judge. The Nigerian public service, like other government institutions, seem to be confronted by similar challenges like having no clear strategic direction, outdated facilities, lack of management vision, to mention but a few. Despite the large proportion of the national budget being voted for the sustenance of this sector, not much is gotten from it. Many have argued that increased accountability, application of information technology could help transform its management. But the question still is, can we have a strong institution without a people with a strong value system? Juvi Ufiene, Suk News.
All right, thanks, Juvio Fiene, for that report. Yes, we'll be looking at digital transformation and service delivery in Nigeria's public service. Now, before we bring in Aliyu Isakano, Chooks is still right here. So, Chooks, when you go over to any government office for any need, maybe you need a document or you need a service there, in recent times, what has been your experience regarding the use of technology in processes?
Okay, thanks for that question. I've had a very good experience. I've had the cause to go to immigration office, and the nice people I met there told me straight, you just didn't need to come here. We have your data already. Go home and do the application. Same thing with my driver's license. I didn't step out of the house.
Okay, so that's happened because they already have your information.
Exactly.
Were you applying for a new driver's license or a new passport, for instance, or what you were doing was probably renewing?
Yeah, I was renewing. I've had my driver's license for over 20 years, so I was just renewing. Well, for those applying for the first, we started quite early.
Okay.
So for those applying for the first time, we need to go to the office because they need to do some physical capturing. Yes.
Okay, so that means that a lot of processes have been automated, but are we there yet? Do we still have a long distance to get to when it comes to digital transformation? Let's ask Aliyu Isakano, the CEO, Metrogate Incorporated, research scholar at Digital Forensic Research Lab, Atlantic Council. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Early Exchange. Please unmute yourself so we can hear you clearly. All right, thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and I'm happy
Looking
to be here in the program.
Service
and,
in
I think
Nigeria.
this is the best time to.
Can you hear me?
To discuss issue that has to do with digital. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, so let's look at Nigeria's public service. How much of digital transformation has it had over the years, in your assessment?
From my own personal assessment and my personal experience, I have been engaging with the Nigerian public service or the public sector for I think since 2008, and there had been like tremendous development in that regard. But still, we are not there yet because there are so many things that we have left behind. Because you cannot put up a system whereby you have like a sector of the public, and I'm talking about the digitizing the existing process. We have whereby you find out that some ministries also in NDAs are far ahead when it comes to this issue of digital transformation, while others are very low, or the recycling process is very minimal. So this affects the whole this in public sector. Though I know transformation is something gradual, it's something that has to be go through step by step. But what I realize and what I notice is that some ministries, also in NDAs, are by far ahead of others when it comes to service delivery, especially when it comes to the digital transformation, moving from that analog sector of using pen and paper to using of gadgets and this and other devices. So that's just my this thing for now. And I think in the this and in the whole process, we have seen a situation uh, whereby the public sector, some they have already developed some of these digital services on their own, whereas sometimes it has to do with policy. Even if, let's say, even if an NDA or a ministry wishes to do something, they have to tell you something has to do with policy. So there has to be that like policy or ICT policy whereby these ministries or these departments have to use these digital services. I can remember before, let's say before the year 2019, most of the ministries and NDAs were using they're using public email, free emails like this, Gmail, the Yahoo, and others. But at this particular point in time, from 2019 up to 2020, and up to this particular moment, most of the ministries are using the government issued domain idea. So it's really, let's say, it's a gradual process. We'll still get there, but still there is a lot that needs to be done in this digital service, let's say, transformation. Because one thing is that we are very slow when it comes to adopting new technologies. Like we are we're very, very slow. Because sometimes we find out that uh, when other countries have already adopted this kind of technology, especially things around artificial intelligence and blockchain, when it comes to civil service, our own is that you find out that most of our policies that we design, especially when it comes to in the public service, they are not human-centered design. So what I mean by human-centered design, the world is moving, the world is evolving, technology is, let's say, is evolving. So whatever policy that we are going to do, it has to be a policy that is tailored towards human-centered design. So there has to be maybe a digital program or something for the digital for lawmakers, especially those policy makers, when it comes to this public service transformation. So as I said, it's about we are very slow when it comes to adopting new technologies. We have seen it a lot. There are states that you go to, especially at the grassroots level, whereby there are states you go to, you find out that they still using this analog method of collecting like data collection, processing, even when it comes to issue that has to do with this issuing out even public statements. Sometimes we find out that they still prefer to use the traditional or old method here than we have new one.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Aliu Issa. We know for sure that technology and innovation and digitalization is the future. Now I want to ask you this question. How easy has it been to make the first users, that's the public servants, embrace this change? Because I know the change must start with the public servants before they can even serve us. So how easy has that been?
Well, it has not been easy because you find out that in most cases, a lot of people don't just want to accept this change. And I believe this even brings us to the issue of even fighting, let's say, promoting good governance and accountability. Because you found out that most of the, if we adopt the digital transformation, corruption will be minimal. So there are some people, there are two issues here. There are some people that feel, especially the analog age, they feel if we use technology, then they are even you are pushing some people out of the this of the service, and government have made a lot of effort, especially when it comes to let's say special training upgrading program for most of the civil servants. I've witnessed some in the states and even at the federal government. But we found out that the bureaucracy and the rigidity around those areas, whereby some of the civil servants feel like, okay, that if this process is digitized, then what we normally do will not be this will not be in place. So, but I think what the this and that what the what the government needs to do is like to try to let's say enlighten these workers that when you have when these processes are digitized, you are going to have improved let's say efficiency and productivity, and at the same time it's going to this and that reduce costs to how government activities or activities are being run, as well as it's going to improve service delivery. Because sometimes you find out that you go to a public office, you find out that 6 or 7 people will be in that office for them to deliver a particular service to you, but majority of them will tell you that okay, the person that is operating the computer is not there. So I think, as I've said earlier, if the civil servant embrace this, then there's going to be so much impact when it comes to transparency and accountability, and as well as the government can do, the one of the ways that the government can do to revamp this introduction with civil service is by, let's say, retiring. Like there are people in the civil service that it has been long overdue. Though I know the civil service has to do with, let's say, you retire either by your age of service or you retire by your, let's say, your number of, let's say, years. But if the civil service can be revamped, then most of the people that are less digitally literate needs to go, and the government needs to employ, let's say, tech savvy youth that are going to be in that are going to make the this and that the civil service more efficient. Because if they're able to do that, it's going to improve in service delivery. I have a personal example that I did with I have a personal example when with the Nigerian Immigration Service that has to do with the passport. In one of the state, in my state in Kano, there was a time I applied for the this when I applied for the to renew my passport. Oh, when I got there, like the first day I went there, I met someone that is a bit older and someone that is less little digitally literate. So he was given all kind of skills and all that. But the following day, I went back and met somebody that is younger and somebody that's tech savvy. And my passport was processed, and I was called to collect the passport in about, I think, 72 hours or thereabout. But just to show how efficient the civil service is going to be. So we just need to bridge that digital divide, that gap between those that are digitally literate in the civil service and those that are not. And the more that we have people that are digitally literate, and the more people that we have that are digitally literate in the civil service, the faster and efficient the service delivery is going to be. And when you have, as a nation, when you have a policy, yeah, or like when you have a policy, we do have ministry for the this and that for communication and digital economy. We have the mix there, and we have other government agencies. So when we have these agencies and they're in good hands and they are doing the things the way they're supposed to be, then at the end of the day, we are going to have this improved service delivery. So the more improvement that we have in service delivery, and the more the nation is going to move forward. This and that is the way I say it.
Okay.
All right, let's look at the cost implication of digitizing some of these processes at the nation's public service. Has it made it more expensive on the side of government and on the side of those who want to access this service?
Oh, well, when you talk about cost, I know technology. People think technology is expensive, but unfortunately, just that we prioritize, or let's say we subscribe or pay for digital technology. We have a lot of entrepreneurs locally that can be able to provide these solutions to government at the barest, just the minimum cost. when you have a public service whereby, let's say a public office is going to order, let's say, for computers or tablets, and you have to go to the procurement department now, have to reach out to somebody that is in China or somebody that is somewhere in the US or in South Africa for him to listen out to make supply of such kind of equipment. You find out that the cost is going to be high. We have local entrepreneurs, we have startups, we have unicorns, digital unicorns that can be able to produce or that can be able to provide these digital services that are going to make our public service very efficient at very little. I'm not saying very little cost, but at a very efficient cost that the government can be able to listen to afford. Uh,
Okay,
let's say take an example
Aliyu, we
of
need to go on a quick
Jigawa
break. We'll
State.
return to that conversation after this time. Please stay tuned.
Am I audible?
Glad to know that you're still there watching Early Exchange as we focus on Nigeria's public service today. A while ago, Aliyu Isa Kano, the CEO of Metrogate Incorporated, research scholar at Digital Forensic Research Lab, Atlantic Council, was talking to us about cost implication of digitizing processes at Nigeria's public service. And he mentioned that efforts are made by government to make it cost effective, so people do not have to pay so much more for digitized processes. And he was already talking to us more about that before we went on the break. So we'll allow him continue with his thoughts on that. Aliyu, welcome back. You were talking about
Thank you.
the
So
cost
for
implication of digitizing processes. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, so if you look at an example of Jigawa State was one of the few states in Nigeria that started this issue that has to do with digital transformation, especially when it comes to e-governance. We have seen a situation whereby the state was able to have this platform where where the governor can be able to track processes that most of the activities of the civil service, even the head of service can be able to access the platform, whereby projects and memos can be signed digitally, and let's say orders can also be signed digitally. So we have seen some of those states. We have seen Kaduna State have done that. We have seen Edo State have also done that, and these three states have done that successfully. And this issue that actually the interest of even for prompted states like Kaduna and Edo State to do what is called the Open Edo and Open Kaduna platforms where citizens can be able to track government activities and what is being done and all that. So when you talk about the cost of governance, it has to do with where the technology is coming from, who is the developer, and what are the devices or items that are needed to this thing to carry out that transformation. So as I have said, uh, let's say to be on the safe, to be on the best side, and to get the let's say maximum output out of this. When it comes to cost, the government should look inward towards our local entrepreneurs, local digital startups that already have these existing technologies and they have all these platforms. They have developed these softwares and applications that can be used to transform the existing the civil service. And most of the cases, we found out that the developers that we have in Nigeria, they are very creative when it comes to developing these apps and let's say platforms where civil service can be listen can be simplified activities of the civil servant. It's just for the government to listen to patronize them or yes patronize them and let's say subscribe to their services so that we can have that efficiency that we are looking for.
Okay, thank you very much. With the introduction of the several government domains and subdomains, information is now easy to reach. Or anyone that needs some service can easily get there and get it done. I want to pick your brain a little. Since you interact with a lot of government ministries and you are a private person, what is the fear of redundancy in the public service thanks to digitalization?
Well, you see, this brings me to the issue whereby I went to the procurement department of one of the agencies, and the person that the HR in that department asked, listen, complained to me was that we are taking people, we are taking jobs out of their hands. So you see, one thing is that when it comes to the only thing that they say that is constant is like is change. So when you have, it's not about the has to be, it's not about redundancy, but it's about moving from one stage of let's say transmission to another. And we found out that is why, if you remember earlier, I said the government needs to, whenever when it comes to the hospital to employing people into the civil service, the government should give priority to those that are digitally literate, apart from even those that are digitally literate. Those that are already in the public service, they should be trained. There are agencies that require this digital transformation much more than others. So those agencies that require this digital transformation effectively, then civil servants can be deployed from any civil servant that cannot be able to cope with any civil servant that cannot be able to cope with digital transformation of a certain ministry should be deployed to another ministry that doesn't require much digital skills or digital service from its employees. So there is no issue that has to do with redundancy because in this digitally evolving world, it's either you're digitally literate or you are going to be out of business or out of job.
All right. Earlier, you alluded to a disparity in in the level of digital adaptation in Nigeria civil service. So, what is the major challenge, or what are the major challenges in Nigeria achieving a comprehensive digital transformation in the country's civil service?
Well, the only word I have to say there is corruption. That's just it.
One word, corruption. Okay.
Yes.
In the past, we've had a high patronage of expatriates, both in private and government agencies. Now, driving this particular process, to what percentage do we have expatriates in the workforce trying to drive this particular process?
Well, it is unfortunate and it's very sad Because if you look at most of the trillionaires club that we have in the country, let's say at the private sector, we're going to talk about that because most of what I mean by trillionaires club, like the Dangote, the MTN, Airtel, the DUA group, and all that, we found out that those areas are dominated by expatriates, especially when it comes to digital jobs, and it's really unfortunate. And also, we have been seeing a situation whereby even at the civil service, it has started creeping in, whereby you see an agency of the government will now hire a consultant that is an expatriate at the expense of a consultant that is a Nigerian and a consultant that can deliver the job faster, better, and let's say cheaper. I'm not saying cheaper, but better in quality and let's say minimal in price than that expatriate. And this brings me back to the issue that has to do with the corruption that I talked about earlier. Because people believe that if, let's say, especially when it comes to procurement at the civil service, we found out that majority of the NDAs, some of the NDAs prefer to, let's say, hire foreign consultants at times, to hire that foreign consultant so that they feel if you pay in foreign denomination or foreign currency, you'll be able to get much more money for this instead of them. So those are some of the issues that are there. So we have whatever technology that you think that exists in the world, we have in Nigeria that is leading on a global level at that technology. Caught me anywhere. So, but we don't use or we don't utilize our local talent. That is sad. We don't utilize our local talent and local gifts that we have around. Though we have seen this in now, organizations like the Nigerian Communication Commission have been organizing hackathons whereby they try to bring this talent and try to bring these ideas to this institution. But after the hackathon and these ideas have been displayed by these very young, smart and tech-savvy Nigerians, we found out that they'll be left at their own feet without any patronage or subscription from the government.
Okay, let's look at civil service engagement with citizens via digital platforms. What areas are there for improvement in terms of citizens' participation and feedback from the civil service?
Well, it depends on on the ministry or the additional agencies, but we have seen whereby, especially when it comes to service delivery, there are agencies or ministries that have been trying or doing things the way they are supposed to do, especially uh, when it comes to offering digital services. But a lot of them are still lag behind, like way lag behind, because sometimes there is a situation whereby even civil service, when it comes to whenever somebody is having an issue with the payment system, IPPIS, the person will try all his best. We have seen that this example to resolve the issue from the state where he is serving, where he is working. But you find that it will not work unless he spends or he flies all the way to Abuja to go and rectify a simple issue that can be that can be resolved digitally. And you find out that a lot of people have complained with this thing now, especially when the government brought up this issue. It has to do with the national identity, this name card, whereby you go to the office, they will tell you that, okay, you don't have network today, come back tomorrow. So you find out that the process is so slow to a point whereby whereby even let's say people or citizens get frustrated with some of the services that are being delivered by this government agency. So it's high time we adopt efficiency and we adopt this digital transformation for us to move this successfully as a nation.
Thank you very much, Aliu Isakano. This time is not enough to really sit with you and analyze this. We'll call you up sometime not too far from now, and we really need to discuss this further. I want to say thank you very much for being on the show. We'll go on break, and after the break, the show will be right back.
Many thanks for being there. If you just joined the show, this is Early Exchange, and we're looking at Nigeria's civil service, wondering why. Well, in the course of discussions, we've established that the Nigerian civil service is a key component of Nigeria's administration machinery. And so to discuss further, we'll be looking at performance and performance evaluation and accountability. Here in the studio, we have Dr. Bamidele Olajide, who's a lecturer at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, UNILAG, is a researcher and a public policy analyst. Good morning, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's look at performance evaluation. What is the performance appraisal like in Nigeria civil service, and what's the objective mainly?
Well, performance of appraisal is a mechanism put in place to ensure that each staff or member of the civil service, the rank and file, adhere strictly, that's on an annual basis, that's their key performance their key performance indicators, what they are expected to do, did they do it, how did they do it, to what are the results of their efforts. So that is performance appraisal, and the overall goal is to ensure that the organization, the civil service, is able to live up to its constitutional responsibility at the end of the period of evaluation.
All right, so when you talk about key performance indicators,
yes,
what would those be generally, regardless of the ministry?
Yes, key performance on an individual basis. For example, maybe those in administration, you want to find out that a staff, is the person punctual? You want to know if he's punctual. If we want to know if the person is doing that's what he's supposed to do, at the end of a year or maybe 6 months, depending on the time frame we are looking at, everybody is expected to play his role. So we want to know, is this person doing his work? Okay, let me just use academics for example. Is that as a lecturer, you want to know, is it going to class? You want to know, is it publishing? You want to know, is it going to conferences? These are the things that you are expected to do, and at the end of the day, your immediate superior, evaluates you, and if you are evaluated, then you see that, okay, invariably or otherwise, you have added to the achievement of the goals of the organization.
Okay, looking at our public service, that's
okay,
our present public service.
Okay.
Is this evaluation working? Is it an ongoing thing? Is it something that is being done?
Of course, it is being done, and to a great extent, it is working.
To a great extent, it's
yes,
working. Okay, now is it in-house or is being done by a private firm or a firm outside the government?
Well, it depends. It depends. But most civil service parastatals, ministry, MDAs and co, they have their own in-house, and if need be, I'm sure they wouldn't mind, getting the job done by external organized bodies, so that they can be well appraised. That it depends on the need. Do they need it? If they need it, I'm sure they wouldn't, spare the resources to ensure that the effective appraisal is done.
Okay, so how does this performance review impact the career of the civil servants or promotion?
Yes, at the end of that appraisal period, it's usually done on a yearly basis, to the best of my knowledge. So, at the end of that year, you find out that, is this person contributing? If yes, then, Is it time for such person to be promoted? Then if yes, then such person will be promoted. If not, there are maybe a 3-year window for promotion. Within that 3-year window, so what we have is you increase their salary a bit. It's all in the effort to make sure that they are motivated even to do more on the job.
Okay, so let's say a situation where a particular civil servant or some civil servants are not performing after the review or the evaluation has been done. What happens?
Yes, they may not be promoted, they may not be recommended for salary increment. And if there are serious cases, they will be recommended, for, they may be recommended for panels, there's a disciplinary action to be taken against them. And if the misdemeanor is so serious, then they will be shown the way out of the civil service. I think that is how it operates.
Okay, that is how it operates, or that is how it's supposed to?
That is actually, that is how it is. It actually operates. Well, it may not be, 100%, maybe I'm talking to preaching, you
coming from
yes.
the academia.
Yes.
Okay, I have a straight question.
Okay.
Now, who appraises local government workers? Or does this happen in local governments?
Of course it does. It does. We have a head of local government. Is the head of the civil service within the local government. So, and under that office we have different sections. So your appraiser, for example, if I work under you, so you do my appraisal, then we pass it up there, then it goes on and on and on that way.
So it's more of a chain from where you are to who is above you.
Yes.
From who is above
from
you
there,
to who is above the group.
Definitely.
Okay. Now, looking at, I'm still going back to local government.
Okay.
In some states, a lot of local governments are redundant. And they say the state government is in charge of what happens in the local government, not the local government. If you need to fix any small thing, they refer you to the state instead of the local government. Now, with this kind of issue, how can you check performance in this sort of local government, knowing very well that everybody is heading to the states?
Well, actually, it is difficult when we over politicize, the operations of the local government. It doesn't allow the local government as the closest tier of government to the people. It doesn't allow it to function. And when you have such situation, the cadre system within the civil service is hampered. Is not allowed to work effectively. So in this scenario that you have painted, performance appraisal, if at all done, might not be objective, and even if it's objective, it may not really have an impact, because, for example, I work under you, but I'm connected to a politician of the governor or the chairman of the local government. I am more loyal to that person than my immediate superior. It crumbles the whole idea of discipline within rank and file.
So what are the chances of bias in internal appraisal when it's not done by an external body? It's an in-house thing. We know ourselves. It's we situation. So what are the chances of bias for or against?
Well, the chance, I'm a social scientist, so I want to say that bias is a fact of life. However, is that you don't allow it to rock the system. Now, is that there are, like I said, there are, KPIs, key performance indicators. They are there, and you, as the superior, you have you hold the system the responsibility to, as much as possible, to faithfully assess your subordinates according to how they have worked within that time frame. You understand? So, well, we cannot rule one form of bias or the other, but if by and large, you find that they are objective. Yeah. They are objective, yes.
Okay, in the private sector, we have targets,
Yes.
which everyone must meet. If you don't meet that target, there's a punishment. Over time.
Okay.
Good. I think that also happens in the academia.
In the
you also
yes.
have a target which
Yes.
you meet, and that is what they base your performance on.
Yeah, of course.
Now, for civil servants, for public civil servants, can we say that there are targets they need to meet, apart from getting to the office and attending to the service of the day? Do they have specific targets that is cut out for them every year?
I think so, yes. However, the targets depend on what you do in a particular ministry, department, or, that's MDA agency, For the agencies, for example, let's say Loma, let's say Lamata, let's say, these are people whose work we see every day,
Exactly.
whose work the society itself can access. So what we are saying here is that it depends on what they do, and I want to believe that as the agencies especially, they have their targets, and you have to key in as a member of such organizations, to the overall targets and goals of your organization within the time, that's the time frame of the evaluation. So they do. And for the larger ministries, I also believe they do. And I hope you know that the objectives are the political, that's the political, economic, and even social objectives of the political class, that is, the executive in this case. So, by and large, all of them, every civil servant, have to key into these broader objectives, divided among the ministries. So they do well. Yes, they do. So don't let me say, I don't want to, compare side by side with the private sector. However, is that they do have, KPIs. That's what they are expected to do. Yes.
All right, you've mentioned something very key while you were talking. You said that for the services that they offer, you give example with some agencies in Lagos that we do see what they do.
Of course.
So that brings me to citizens' role. What should be the role of the citizens in performance evaluation of public servants? They are public servants. They render service to the general public.
Yeah.
So what should be the role?
Yeah, thankfully, the public is the consumer of the activities or the services of most of these agencies and even the civil service, because at the end of the day, the goal of the state is to ensure a better life for the citizens. So the citizens is for us as citizens, we need to constantly, unceasingly, evaluate the civil service and the agencies, the ministries, and co. How do we do this as a people? Is that, for example, the Ministry of Transport is supposed to give us, quality roads, nice transportation, that's multimodal transportation network and co. So these are the things we want. At the end of the year, we need to speak up. And this is example of what we are doing, because this is, a citizen-led forum, media, community development associations, and all of these people, so that everybody will speak out. We criticize, offer that constructive criticism. Okay, you've done this well. Okay, how about this? You understand? Public engagement. How about this? How about you do this way? We feel it is better this way. We feel it is better that way. So by then, by the time all of us, all over Nigeria do this, then even the civil service, they sit up and they offer better services for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much. To what extent can we align budget implementation to performance of ministries?
Yeah, that's critical. That's critical because they can't do anything, resources. So budget implementation is a critical aspect of this evaluation. I mentioned the Ministry of Transport. Then, I have no interest in them, I'm just citing an example.
We all do.
No, I mean for this.
For this
yes,
show?
Yes.
No,
yes.
after this show we do.
So what I'm saying is that, for example, in Lagos State, there's a budget for road, there's a budget for rail, At the end of the year, we expect, when the budget cycle is coming to an end, we expect that you want to build 200 kilometers road, we expect 200 kilometers road of good quality.
Okay.
You understand? So that is, while we as citizens might not be able to go into these organizations to, the paper assessment, however, is that with what we are seeing, we can assess them.
Okay.
You understand? So, where does that go back? It goes back because it gives us an idea of how effectively they have implemented their budgetary, portfolio for the year. So that is it.
Okay, so how does these two factors impact performance? Political interference and inadequate funding?
Oh, these are terrible. I mean, let me say the terrible twin. Political interference, I mentioned the case of local government. It destroys, the chain of command within rank and file, apparently. Because if you are not obedient, to your immediate supervisor, it creates, a problem within that chain of command. For example, maybe you are my manager and you are the general manager. It is not possible for me to, bypass you. That's ordinarily to see the general manager. But once political interference comes in, you find out that we break that line of, the necessary line of communication within the service. So political interference. Then in terms of appointment, political interference, it doesn't allow for the appointment of that's the merit-based appointment, people who can really do the job. You understand? It doesn't allow for that. Even promotion, it can destroy that's motivation of civil servants to do the job. Because, for example, maybe you and I get, we got the job the same time, and because you have a political godfather now and I don't have, then you are already on grade level 14. I'm still struggling with 11. That is wicked. As far as I'm concerned. Then poor funding. We all know, what is happening with poor funding. The budget, when government doesn't make enough money or allocate enough money into the civil service, it allows. It doesn't allow the MDAs, to perform their work objective. Effectively. And when they do, the product lacks quality. The product lacks quality. From my constituency, we're all aware of how it happens within the academia, and the result leaves a very terrible taste in the mouth.
Okay, thank you. Looking at performance and accountability.
Okay.
How can we really measure accountability, or measure accountability with information absence? For some time, we were looking at Freedom of Information Bill, not passing it. Now, if the government is not open with what they are doing, how can we say they are accountable to the people?
At the federal level, the FOI is are well and alive. I'm sure you are aware of that. I think it's just for the state governments to show faith, to domesticate this Freedom of Information Act. Because once there is no information, it hampers we citizens' ability to, to prowl, to see what is happening within, and government shouldn't be about secrecy. And now, when we are talking of civil service, they may not open certain information to you. However, I'm sure, there is a baseline of certain, information that can go out. However, is that when FY is not there, they may not even be obliged to give you. So I want to believe that the state would show faith in getting this done. However, at the federal level, if you need information, you can, I think, you can approach the concerned bodies.
Okay.
All right, still talking about accountability. Now, there are anti-corruption agencies such as the AFCC, the ICPC that are set up to make sure that people are accountable, and where they're not, they have to see the process of holding them accountable, making them serve some form of penalty.
Yes.
For this to happen, because AFCC, for instance, or even ICPC cannot just come to a civil service without a whistleblower. So looking at the whistleblower policy, how much of protection does it offer for the whistleblower to encourage whether they're civil servants still within the same ministry or citizens to ensure that people in certain positions are made accountable?
Yeah, I think there are institutions even within the civil service to ensure, there's ethical engagement. We have Savicom, and I'm sure they work together with these organizations, ICPC, EFCC, and co. So, if, for example, you are not satisfied with their service, let's not even go to EFCC, to that level now. For example, you need something done in a ministry and you are not happy. I'm sure that, there are processes for you as a citizen to seek redress, through Savicom. You tell them, you make a complaint, you understand, and where these complaints are of criminal proportions, I'm sure, the link are always there to ensure that the culprits are brought to book.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to follow her footstep and talk about the ICPC and the EFCC.
Okay.
How independent are these bodies, knowing fully well where the head of the EFCC is right now? So how independent are these bodies, and how independent do you think they should be?
Their name says they are independent.
On paper.
Well, however, is that we know that they are not really independent. You will recall there was a president in this country that really used the FCC as a political, bulldog. You understand? Well, we don't need to mention names. However, is that they are not independent, and for example, and even within the civil service, if there are issues, since, if they are not, essentially independent, it can even affect their response to these things that we are seeing. So, what we can do is to ensure that government lives to that responsibility of ensuring that these bodies are indeed independent, resources, that's the necessary financial autonomy, the necessary administrative autonomy for them to, to act as ethical organizations.
So in the demand for quality service, and the beneficiaries of the service evaluate the performance of those who offer the service, let's look at bureaucracy. For instance, Servicom, there's an issue maybe with any ministry, or someone has observed that service is not offered as it should be.
Okay.
You go to Servicom. Let's look at the bureaucratic processes that you need to go through, from one office to the other, or from one person, one petition after another. Does that not frustrate the demand for service?
Of course, it can frustrate, and it does. I understand it does. What we can do is to continue to, to advocate that that we reduce bureaucracy, especially in in a quick, swift administration of these complaints that you have cited an example, so that, because they say justice delayed is justice denied. So, for example, if I approach a government body for a service, and for example, I mean, maybe I'm asked to pay a bribe, just hypothetically now, I'm asked to pay a bribe, and I want to, complain to Servicom, and then bureaucracy rears its ugly head. Number one is that it's wasting my time as a consumer of that service. As a matter of fact, that service at that time might be a thing of life and death. You understand? So I understand that bureaucracy can be very, very deadly. So we need to keep talking, you guys in the media, those of us in the academia and research, the citizen, the man on the street, the woman in the market. We need to start, to continue to talk, so that these bottlenecks can be reduced, so that anybody, because what it does is to erode the confidence of would-be complainants. You understand? Because they're not going to do anything, and it's terrible for the system itself, because any system that is not able to to question itself, to question its operations, you find that system, gradually goes into disrepute and crisis. So it doesn't help the civil service itself. So thank you very much.
Okay, now looking at the size of the public service, the population size of the public service, do you think is affecting performance?
Well, the public service in Nigeria is bloated. Yeah, you understand. You go to some ministries, you find people sitting, watching Africa Magic, and yeah, it happens. You go to local government, they don't even have portfolio there. They don't have anything they do. In fact, they are just working for the next allocation day to collect whatever, amount that is due them, and all you know is that you don't see them again until the next payday. So what we must do is to, remove political interference from all of these things. Civil service cannot be, a mechanism or tool for political accommodation, or, enough of spoils politics that we play in Nigeria, so that when it is lean, it number one, we save resources. Number two is that, we have, and that's the correct numbers of the people that we need to man our public institutions, and you find that we will achieve better results, because with that will come meritocracy, because I up on merit, because you find that you go to, for example, it will shock you that political science students, international relations students, you'll be surprised. You count them with fingers of, by counting them with fingers in Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and these are people basically trained for that task. So that we begin to put square pegs in square holes within the public service.
All right, on a final note on this discussion, at what point would external appraisal and audit be needed? Because even when there are internal audits and you go to some offices, maybe offices where they usually open, you go there by 8 o'clock, you're not finding anybody, and you get there by 8 and everybody's, auditors are coming. So at what point do we need that kind of auditing or appraisal externally?
It does happen. We have Civil Service Commission, they audit, that's the ministries. Yeah, they do.
All ministries?
All ministries, they do. So we may not know that's the time frame where they do these things, but it happens because the Civil Service Commission is the overall body, that oversees the operations of civil service, both at the state and federal level. So they do. And like I said, if need be for external audit, even outside the Civil Service Commission, I'm sure they do all these things from time to time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bamidele Olajide, who is a lecturer at the Department of Political Science, UNILAG. He's also a researcher and public policy analyst. He's talked to us extensively about performance evaluation and accountability in Nigeria's civil service. Thank you very much for your valuable contribution on the show this morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure being here.
All right, we'll go to a quick break, and there is one more thing to look at as it concerns Nigeria's civil service. Stay tuned. All right, thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange. Now let's get to where it all begins. After looking at different issues surrounding Nigeria's civil service, ethical standards, code of conduct, digital transformation, service delivery, as well as performance evaluation and accountability, let's now look at merit-based recruitment and, of course, promotion. And Chooks will tell us who we're talking with us on that. Chooks.
Yeah, thank you very much. With us today is Dr. Ola Ifatimehin. He's a lecturer from the Department of Theatre and Performing Arts, Bayero University. You're welcome, sir. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, we'll be talking about merit-based recruitment and promotion in Nigerian public service. And we have got the right man to do justice to this very topic. Good morning, sir.
Dr. Ola Ifatimehin, can you hear us? Okay, it doesn't seem like he can. While he handles that, yes, talking about recruitment and merit-based recruitment and promotion. Now, this is one area where many Nigerians have had issues. For some, they do not even know when the recruitment are done, and so they don't know how it's being done. But we need to understand how recruitment into different positions at the various ministries, departments, and the agencies of government are done. When we talk about merit-based, it's like you wanting to get admission into the university. I do know that there is what is called the merit list. And so the merit list for those who have written JAM and then they had the cut-off mark or above the cut-off mark for that particular course. And those who did the post-UTME, they also got the cut-off mark or above the cut-off mark for that particular course. Of course, they're granted admission. And then you also have the supplementary list, but we do not know exactly if that also applies to recruitment in the civil service. So, but when we talk about merit-based, the expectation of every Nigerian would be that whoever you're bringing into a particular position is, first of all, qualified for that position before you're bringing in the person. But we know that different factors play out. We have nepotism. That we also have the Federal Character Commission. Now, to what extent does the Federal Character Commission, Federal Character Policy affect merit-based recruitment? First of all, they need to get into there before we talk about promotion. For promotion to happen, it comes from what we just looked at, performance evaluation. And so let's see how all of this plays out. I believe we can now get back to Dr. Ola Ifatime, and he'll talk to us more about that. But before we ask him about that, what's your view regarding recruitment into Nigeria Civil Service? From what you get when you go into any office, from the service that you get, what's your assessment regarding the recruitment?
Okay, let's start from the first line you told when you were talking about this. You said knowledge of when the recruitment itself happened. I have not been following the papers of late, but Thursdays used to be majorly applications, and you get to see people as in publications for people to apply for jobs. A lot of all those, I don't know if they still do it now. For most of public service jobs, they still, as of then, I don't know if they still do it now, they still do a quota system where a lot people are sent to their states, either to go write a particular exam or do some registration or just do one thing or the other. But I don't know if that is still tenable now. Then for some ministries, some years back, they gathered them in public places and tell them to come write exam, which was not that normal. It wasn't that normal at all. This is supposed to be open. We're talking about a unique system. It's supposed to be open. If you're good at it, if you write an exam and you pass, then there should be that merit in it.
Okay, you use the word that should be.
Yes, that should be.
The ideal situation. But as we know, the ideal situation doesn't always happen. Let's look at the federal character policy, where you should have a representation from every region in a particular place. What if those persons are not qualified, or some of those persons are not qualified?
Yet, if they are not qualified, they should not get the job.
But there is a federal character.
That's now what we ask ourselves. Should federal character work to the detriment of the nation? Let me ask you another question. For marine services, what is somebody in Zamfara going to do in marine services?
Is it about the location or
Yes.
about the qualification?
Now, it's also about the location. I don't know, it's also about the location. Moving a university that is going to teach someone about oceanography to where you don't even have water bodies is not helping. These are things
First of all, it's going to be theoretical study.
Yeah, these are things we should look at. Offering a job to a particular region where that service is not useful to them. It's not just for job's sake. It's for developmental issues. It's to be able to develop not just the people but also a location. So these are things we should also look at.
Okay, looking at the issue of for job's sake, because government seems to be the largest employer or the biggest employer of labor.
Which should not be.
Yeah, but we have a lot of persons who are employees under the employ of the government, whether at the federal level, at the state level, or the local level. For the private sector, you barely find a private sector that has a staff strength of maybe 2,000, 3,000. That is quite rare to see. But you have government agencies that have maybe nationwide close to that number or even outnumbering that. So it seemed like there is no balance between the social angle of this, trying to provide jobs for people, trying to attend to a need, and the part of ensuring quality service. How can that gap be bridged? Where do we bring a balance to this?
Okay, let's start from the public service. A position is open when someone leaves.
Okay.
That is when a position is supposed to be open. Let's say some retire, you promote to fill up that gap, you keep going, then that means there's an opening down. Ministries are not companies, they're not manufacturing firms where you say there's a new product, there's a new line, okay, we are opening up a new plant in this state, then good, we are employing. Ministry is supposed to be slim. All our speakers have talked about that. So For public service jobs should go to people that have a mind to serve. That should be the first requirement. Do you have a mind to serve?
How do you determine someone with a mind to serve at the level of recruitment or at the stage of recruitment?
That now boils down to this. We don't have jobs for those that are even seeking it. So that is not still going to work. Now, if government is opening up, that's good. Businesses are going to come in, that's good. So the focus on jobs should go to the private enterprise. The focus on jobs should go to private enterprise. And if you ask me, I will say the government public service should start going slim.
Okay. Now, let me take you back to advertising job openings.
For government job openings or private job openings? Government
job openings.
Okay.
Now, some have the argument that if you do that, it'll draw a crowd that they cannot handle. Remember the incidents that happened with the immigration service? Oh yes, where at different states you have people coming into the stadium like there was about to be a football match, but the only thing that everybody had a particular color that they wore, and it was white. So the stadium was filled with white people, and people wearing white as if they were there to support a particular club. But that was supposed to be like a recruitment process. So avoiding situations like that could be the reason why there is no advertisement done for job openings in government circles, because many people want jobs. So when you make that advertisement, do you think that reason is justifiable?
No, it's not.
Are there better ways to handle that?
Definitely there are better ways to handle that. But first we need to ask ourselves, what is the unemployment rate? So right now, except that unemployment rate goes down, we'll keep having that.
Okay, let's talk some more with Dr. Ola Ifatime, who is a lecturer at the Department of Theatre and Performing Arts, Bayero University, Kano. He's joining us via Zoom. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show. Please, can you unmute yourself?
Good morning.
And speak with us. All right. So we've been talking about merit-based recruitment and promotion in Nigerian civil service. Let's understand how does recruitment happen in Nigerian civil service? Merit-based recruitment.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so recruitment, the question is, because I keep hearing you mention merit, right? So what exactly is merit? Is it one's ability to present a certificate or one's capacity to get the job done, right? What are we referring to really as merit? If it is that one has to present certificates to get a job, then so be it. But you see, the practice nowadays is that you hardly hear about any form of recruitment. People simply get jobs and you wonder when it was advertised and all that, nothing happens. So in terms of the publicity that the recruitment process should have, it's quite low. People don't get to hear about recruitment processes, that people are taking jobs and all that. So it becomes difficult for those who can compete fairly and favorably to access these recruitment channels in order to get jobs.
Okay, then for those getting the jobs, thank you for coming on, Dr. Bamidele. For those, sorry, Dr. Ola, for those getting these jobs, how do they get these jobs, since there are no advertisements?
Inside information. Inside information, they have people in the offices, the parastatals, who are aware that there is an uncanny subterranean recruitment taking place. So they will inform their people to come and, try their luck. That is how they find out. The bosses simply corner the opportunities and only give their friends and families, that is the way it goes. But if there is adequate publicity, you will find that more people will apply And then the issue of merit in terms of who presents the higher qualification should get the job. But everything is shrouded and people don't even get to know. You only see new stuff coming around and you're wondering, when did the recruitment take place? Nobody knows, So that is the crisis. There is a subterranean arrangement that does not allow the public to know. Only those who know are allowed to know, and then they apply.
But doesn't that give rise to nepotism?
I mean, of course, it is absolute impudence. Like, if you give someone the power to recruit, to fire at will, you will expect that certainly there will be such nepotism. So it's a crisis, really. If one person controls who comes in, who leaves, when it is done, there is absolutely going to be an abuse, and that is the crisis. There needs to be fairness, openness, and advertisements that are widely spread for any opportunity you have. But it's hardly the case nowadays, and it's unfortunate.
Okay, Dr. Ola, you said something when you started early. You said, is it merit based on certificate or is it merit based on performance? Okay, let me give you this example. You get to class or you get to your department on Monday and you see someone that has just been employed to be in your theater arts department, and you know this, you watch this person and this person can't perform in the first place. How does that affect your student?
Well, generally, there is a standard you expect. I mean, if somebody should present a certificate that he has a master's degree, and luckily for us in theater and performing arts, the certificate is simply an entry, an entry pass. The capacity to, because we do, so you have to be well skilled to either direct or to act or to teach costume and create or to dance or something. So there must be a capacity that you will demonstrate. So if you have the certificate and you are unable to demonstrate such a capacity, definitely the students, I mean, they see and they will begin to compare and they will begin to draw their own conclusions about this person. And if you cannot do it, they know you cannot do it. You may have all the degrees in the world. Once you do not have the capacity, we will say that you do not merit the position. That is why I started by asking, is it merit based on your certification or based on your capacity? So if I see a new staff, I'll be excited because it means that the workload I carry will be less. But if the person cannot carry the weight of the certificate he presents, then the weight doubles for me because one, we will have to cope with a colleague who does not know the job, who cannot carry out the simple tasks given. And then two, he presents results around. Now students see it. And students, because they see a standard that is not there, that somebody can simply present a result and get the job whether he can do it or not, some of them will become relaxed.
All right, we do have the Federal Civil Service Commission. So what role does it play in recruitment, ensuring meritocracy?
Yes.
Whether
so the
on the level, on both sides, the certificate and the performance, ensuring a match.
Yes, you see, the Civil Service Commission, there are things that are already placed on ground, principles, practices that would guide and ensure for better and very good recruitment processes and sustenance of the employment one is given. You see, the first 3 years is some kind of an examination for you. We are expected to do those first 3 years so that you will be monitored, and then we will see if you have the capacity before your employment can be made permanent. But nowadays, like I mentioned, this does not happen. If the Civil Service Commission should do its job, then you will know that one, positions need to be publicly, widely advertised for anybody who is qualified for that position. I mean, you will see whatever credentials, whatever the requirements for that job is, right? Then secondly, once the recruitment processes and we have successful candidates, they are placed on the probationary period, so that we will see what they can do. And then if you have the certificate but you cannot do the job, after those 3 years, you can either be given 1 extra year or your employment will be terminated. But nobody seems to care anymore. If the boss's cousin is given a job, who wants to place that person on the probationary role? Some of them may not even come to the office, and nobody can report that they are not doing well. So until we go back to the system that has already been placed to guide and ensure that merits, that people are proactive and all that is done, we'll just keep going in circles, and we'll be wondering what is happening to the world, what is happening to the nation. And the basic thing is there is no merit to what people are doing. You just pick people and put them in places, sometimes square pegs in round holes. Nobody cares.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ola. We are looking at the public service, and now let's look at promotion. How has promotion been in public service? Is there some merit to it, or is it strictly based on merit?
Well, I can confidently speak for the academia. I know that in this environment, the academic environment where we are, you will not get promoted without merit. I mean, it's not possible. You must demonstrate, teaching, research, conducting examination, social responsibility, and all that before you can be promoted. I mean, you cannot be a senior lecturer, for instance, if you do not have a PhD. And there is nowhere you will go and you will find a lecturer, right? A lecturer who is a senior lecturer in his department without a PhD. So in the academia, I know that we insist on these parameters, on these requirements. And then once you are a professor, there are also the criteria that you must attain to become a professor, for instance. So in this system, I can confidently say that yes, merit is the key word. People ensure that the requirements of the office, the requirements of the position is attained first before you can be allowed to get promoted. Yeah, but for the civil service, I don't know. The constant thing I know is that after every 3 years, you get promoted to the next rank. But in the academia, 3 years are not enough. Within these 3 years, it is expected that you would have achieved certain things that can give you the room to move to the next phase. And once you do not have that, you stagnate at that position until you achieve the requirements before you can be promoted.
Okay, the requirements for promotion in different sectors, of course, varies. You just stated that of the academia. In other sectors, should we be looking only at certifications? I know that matters a lot in the academia. There are certain certificates you must have per time for you to move on to the next stage, even when you perform well. Now, how do we achieve a balance? Because we've seen in cases where the Oga at the top depends on the subordinate to do their job. So how do we bring that into requirements for promotion?
Yeah, well, the basic thing is if you pick on so much administrative responsibility when you should be pursuing your own career and be ensuring that the trajectory of your growth is well defined and it's well aligned to your realities, then nobody needs to push you, But in instances where you find the Oga asking the junior person to do the job, one, it could be because he has so much on his hands. Two, it could be that the junior staff understands the job better. I mean, simply because you are the boss doesn't mean you have to know it all, right? I mean, leadership even ensures that you delegate responsibility and you ensure that people who know better do it. And the credit still goes to the leader, So it doesn't matter who does the job, but as the junior staff, you should also not lose track of the requirements you must have before you can become the Oga that you are serving and serving very well. Yeah. So in terms of the balance, between capacity and the certificate. It is the system, and it has been established that you need to have certain certificates before you can be promoted. So no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how well versed you are in the field, if you do not have that certificate, you are not going to be promoted. And if you are not well versed, why not just go get the certificate? I don't see any reason why one would limit himself to capacity and say he has so many years of experience, he does not need the certificate, when it is clearly stated that the certificate is the key, right? It is the pass you need to move to the next phase. So you cannot just pursue it.
Okay.
Yes,
Quickly,
capacity cannot be wished away, but the certificate is also very important.
okay. Now, you just talked about capacity and certificates. I want to take you up on something you just said quickly. You said it doesn't matter who does the job, but the Oga earns more if it happens that he can't do the job because he doesn't have the capacity, and then the subordinate who's doing the job doesn't earn as much. Isn't that unfair?
Okay. Yeah, so when I said that the Oga may not necessarily know how to do it, I'm not talking about the primary task he has. His primary task at the end of the day, especially as a lecturer, is to teach, right? So if there are other things he would need, maybe somebody to create an Excel sheet for somebody, for instance, and it's a junior staff who knows how to do it, you can call that person to do it. But the primary criteria of teaching, he will certainly have that capacity. He may not have the time, and he would, in the instance of mentorship, invite a junior colleague to handle certain courses, certain topics for him. That does not mean that he does not know how to do the job. It simply means that he may not have the required time, or he's giving the junior person the opportunity to also learn on the job. But promotion certainly has to be certificated. I believe that it should be so.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olai Fatimei. You've been talking with us today on merit-based recruitment and promotion. Dr. Olai Fatimei is a lecturer at the Department of Theatre and Performing Arts, Bayero University, Kano. Thank you very much for your time. And that's the length of the show today. No thanks to time, but I believe we're able to do justice to the issues that relate to the public service in Nigeria. But one key takeout for me here is that as you pursue capacity, pursue the certificate that matches that capacity. Otherwise, you might just be shortchanged for someone who perhaps has a certificate but doesn't have the capacity. Whatever you do, ensure you have a balance, and let the system ensure that round pegs are fixed in round holes, square pegs in square holes, for us to have an effective civil or public service. I am Blessing H. That's the show. Business Insight comes up at 10 a.m. in Chooks.
Thank you very much, and do have a blessed day.